So text 30. Dehi nityam avadhyoyam dehe sarvasya bharata tasmat sarvani bhutani natvam sochitum arhasi. Dehi means the owner of the body. Deha means body. So the owner of the body, Dehi, Nityam, he is eternal. Avadhyaha, he cannot be killed. Vadha means killed. Avadhyaha means cannot be killed. Ayam, the soul, or the Dehi, which is entrapped in the body, or the Dehe. Body is Dehe. Sarvasya Bharata. Dehe Sarvasya Bharata. In all these bodies, that soul, the owner of the body, the spirit soul, is eternal and cannot be killed. O Bharata. Tasmat, therefore, Sarvani Bhutani Natvam Sochitum Arhasi. So any creature, Sarvani Bhutani, cannot be killed. The spirit soul in all these creatures cannot be killed, in all these living entities. Natvam Sochitum, you do not lament, Arhasi, you don't deserve to lament for this. This sort of summarizes the theme in the last 20 verses that Krishna has adopted. So this chapter, the first section of this chapter was text 1 to 10, which was basically Arjuna's continuation of lamentation and his surrender to Krishna, accepting Krishna as his spiritual master. And then from 11th verse onwards to 30th verse, Krishna started chastising Arjuna and started explaining the knowledge, gnana, of the spirit soul. The basics. You are not the body, you are the soul. So basically the whole 20 verses cover various aspects of that theme. So to summarize, what does this last 20 verses, the second section of the chapter, cover? One is that the living entity is spirit soul and not the body. So therefore the identity of the living entity is established as a spirit soul, as unchangeable, immutable, indestructible, immortal. And then the body and soul is compared. The soul is immortal, whereas the body is mortal, temporary. Antavanta ime deha nityasyoktaha sharirina. And does it mean, if the soul is eternal and Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to fight, does it mean this encourages whimsically killing people? No, it does not encourage. That's what Prabhupada also mentions in the purport. Though the soul is immortal, violence is not encouraged. But at the time of war, which is sanctioned by the authority, in this case Krishna himself or Krishna's representative, if the war is inevitable and is sanctioned, then it is allowed, violence. Then the killing is allowed. So that has to. So what is the condition for that? That need must be justified in terms of the sanction of the Lord and not capriciously. And Krishna is urging Arjuna to fight because he is a Kshatriya. He has to do the duty, and during the war, a Kshatriya cannot hide or give up his duty. So this section uses the Gnana argument to counter Arjuna's one of the arguments that he used in the first chapter to not fight. So Arjuna gave 4 arguments. One is based on compassion. One is based on the loss of enjoyment after winning the battle or losing the battle. And then the third argument was the fear of sinful reactions. And the fourth argument was destruction of family traditions. So in this 11 to 30th verses of the second chapter, Krishna, by giving gnana of the spirit soul, is trying to enlighten Arjuna and get him out of that mode of material compassion. Don't be compassionate on the material platform. The spirit is not destructible. You have to do your duty, therefore fight. So by giving the knowledge, Gnana, Krishna has encouraged Arjuna to fight in these 20 verses. Now the second or the third section of the second chapter is verses 31 through 38. So this talks about the Karma Kanda. How by performing the duty entrusted to a particular varna, like a Kshatriya or a Brahmana or a Vaishya or a Sudra or whatever it is, by properly doing the duty, one can aspire to go to heavenly planets or progress in material life, which is of course not a spiritually impressive line of thought, but Krishna is gradually raising Arjuna's consciousness. First he is separating body and soul, and then he is taking him to the scriptures, the Karma Kanda portion of the scriptures, which emphasizes doing our duty based on our prescribed occupation. So now let's go into the 31st verse, where Krishna starts another section. He starts answering the second argument of Arjuna, who declined to fight. Any questions so far on what we discussed before we go to 31? Okay. So can you do the 31, Mataji? So text 31. Swadharmam api chavekshya navikampitum dharmyadhi yuddhat shreyonyat kshatriyasya na vidyate. So as I said, from 31 to 38 is another section of this chapter where Krishna uses the Karma Kanda argument. He makes use of the Karma Kanda portion of the Vedic literature to drive Arjuna to fight. Krishna gave a hint of this in second verse of this chapter, where he said, Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? These don't lead to higher planets. Asvargyam, akirtikaram, anarya justam. So like that, he gave a hint, and now he is going to expand on it. So 31 and 32 actually, they counter the argument of Arjuna about loss of enjoyment. So if you remember in the first chapter, he spoke about how this war is detrimental for their enjoyment, even if they win or lose. If they lose anyway, they lost. No enjoyment. If they win, they did not have anyone to show off their material opulence. All people will be dead. So what is the use of fighting? So for that, Krishna is trying to counter that argument by saying, if you do your dharma properly, swadharmam apicha avekshya na vikampitum arhasi. If you do your swadharma, if you consider your kshatriya duty, your swadharma is to fight. Dharmyadhi yuddhat. Your dharma is yuddha. Shreyaha anyat. There is no other better duty for a kshatriya. Kshatriyasya na vidyate. Therefore, do not hesitate. Na vikampitum arhasi. You don't deserve to hesitate like this. So I have considered your dharma. Swadharmam api chavekshya. I have considered it. And this is better for you. And in the Shastras it is said, if one performs his prescribed duty properly, then he will be promoted to the heavenly planets. So indirectly, Krishna is saying, what more enjoyment do you want? Heavenly planets. You want, people who perform their prescribed duties properly, they go to heavenly planets. And even if you die, you go to heavenly planets. If you live, you will enjoy the kingdom. So that is the sum and substance. So many other nice points Prabhupada brings up in the purport. The meaning of Kshatriya is given. Kshatriya means one who gives protection from Kshat. Kshat trayate iti Kshatriya. Kshat means hurt. Trayate means one who gives protection. So the duty of a Kshatriya is not to abandon violence, but to act in such a way one gives protection from harm. One punishes the aggressor, transgressor of religious etiquette. And this is the second of the 4 social orders. It is meant for good administration. Kshatriya is meant for good administration. Tejo sauryam, tritirdakshyam, yuddhe chapi apalayanam, danam ishvara bhavascha, kshatram karma svabhavajam. This is explained in 18th chapter, the duties of a Kshatriya. And the training of a Kshatriya is also mentioned. How it's not just enough to identify one as a good administrator, as a Kshatriya, but one has to be trained also. If you don't get trained, you remain a Sudra. Janmana jayate Sudra. One who gets identified as a Brahmana or a Kshatriya or a Vaishya, they have to get trained. Just see here, even up to in the recent times, kings in Jaipur, they would go to forest, they would challenge a tiger face to face with a sword, and they would, personally kill the tiger, and then the tiger would be brought for royal order of cremation. So for Kshatriya, certain things are permitted. The violence, the hunting for practicing the warfare, these are all permitted for a Kshatriya. And it doesn't mean that it is a nasty job, because even in the Brahmana's job, if you are performing Vedic sacrifices, it involved animal sacrifices. Of course, not for the purpose of meat eating. It was for the purpose of elevating the animal's existence. The animal who gets killed by the Vedic mantra gets a new lease of life. So it is actually beneficial for the animal. So even the Brahmanas are supposed to do these kind of things. No job is pretty. Of course, the grass is always greener on the other side. So that doesn't mean that one give up their prescribed duties and take up somebody else's job. So that is why Krishna also mentions in 3rd chapter as well as in 18th chapter, Shreyan Swadharmo Vigunaha Paradharmat Suanushthitat. It's better to engage in one's prescribed duty. So that is the argument Krishna is using to fight as a Kshatriya. And Swadharma actually is a very interesting word because it can be applied on 2 platforms. One is on the material platform and one is on the spiritual platform. As we know, we are all spirit souls and we have a particular dharma. Dharma means one cannot escape from doing it. That is dharma. Or that which is natural to somebody. Just like the dharma of sugar is sweet. Sugar has to exhibit its dharma. Otherwise it is not sugar. The salt has to be salty. So like that, for every particular object or a thing or an entity, there is a dharma. And that cannot be avoided. So the dharma for a living entity is to render service to the Lord on the spiritual platform. But that dharma on the material level, when it takes a material body, it gets exhibited pervertedly in terms of rendering service to others. So we render service to our family, our children, our society, our country, our pets, and so on and so forth. So that original dharma when it is taken a form, when it is covered with the material body, it takes a different shape. So there are two levels of dharma. One is on the material level and one is on the spiritual level. So when we accept a spiritual master and when we take the step towards spiritual progress, we identify ourselves on the spiritual platform and abide by the order of the spiritual master and execute in those duties. That is spiritual swadharma. Whereas on the material platform, because we do have a body and the body has certain inclinations as a kshatriya or a brahmana or a vaishya or a sudra, there are also bodily swadharmas mentioned in the scriptures, like varnashrama. It mentions how a brahmana should act, how a kshatriya should act, how a sudra should act, how a vaishya should act, like that. These are all bodily swadharmas. And these are not by birth, that one should clear that misconception. Narada Muni says in Srimad Bhagavatam, Yasya yal lakshanam proktam varnabhivyanjakam yadannetrapi drishyeta tattenaiva vinirdishet. One should be identified as a brahmana or a kshatriya, etc., based on the qualities they exhibit, not based on their birth. So like that. It should be, for a kshatriya, to protect everyone is their dharma. Like Parikshit Maharaj. He was going around everywhere to see where there is some kind of adharma happening. The government has to make sure that everyone is following their duties. If somebody is proclaiming themselves as a brahmana, he has to act as a brahmana. Somebody is proclaiming as a vaishya, he has to act as a vaishya. Similarly, kshatriya and sudra. So it is a duty of the government to make sure everyone is following their duties. But unfortunately now it has become degenerated. The government more often cares only for the sudras and to certain extent vaishyas, and in some countries the military power. And the idea is not to properly train the kshatriyas, but to engage in sense gratificatory activities by exploiting the weaker countries. And brahmanas are completely neglected. There is practically no government in the world who is making an effort to create and maintain and make sure brahmanas are created and trained properly. When I say brahmana, it is not the caste brahmana. Do not mistake. Brahmana means shamo damah tapah saucham kshantir arjavam. Nowhere in these qualities is a caste mentioned. These are all qualities, attributes one can possess. Shamaha means control of mind. Damaha means control of senses. Tapaha means austerity. Saucham means cleanliness. Kshanti means forbearance, simplicity, honesty. So these are all the wonderful qualities a brahmana person has to possess. And then he has to teach the scriptures. He has to know how to make one a devotee. He has to be a devotee of the Lord. How to perform sacrifices. Even they are able to guide the kshatriyas properly. But nowhere in the world we see that a brahmana is encouraged or there is a concerted effort to bring up brahmanas. Therefore, many times you see Prabhupada mentioning, our movement is creating genuine, bona fide brahmanas, training brahmanas. Nowhere else in the world is there such movement, such process. Of course, when we actually become progress, we progress in the spiritual path, we transcend the Brahmana qualification and then also become a Vaishnava, which already includes Brahmanical qualifications. But the important part is neglect. Just like the head, the whole body works based on how our head directs us. So if there is no proper head in the society will become chaotic, will become irreligious. will become, there is no peace. So Brahmanas have to be given importance, just as Kshatriyas also have to be identified and trained, as well as Vaishyas and Sudras. So that is the Swadharma on the bodily level, which was what our Varnashrama Dharma was doing in those days. Everyone was following their Varna and Ashrama. The Brahmana would have this Brahmacharya, Gruhastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyasa. Of course, the Gruhastha is not a necessary thing for a Brahmana. He can directly become a Sannyasa from being a Brahmana. But for those who want to get married, they are allowed to get married, but they have to take Vanaprastha and Sannyasa. For a Kshatriya, only Vanaprastha is allowed, no Sannyasa is allowed. And for a Vaishya, only Gruhastha is allowed. So for Sudra, there is, of course, only Gruhastha is allowed. And of course, for a Vaishnava, it doesn't matter which Varna or Ashrama he is in, as long as he is engaged in the service of the Lord. Because Krishna consciousness transcends Varnashram Dharma. That's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, when Ramananda Rai said, Varnashrama Dharma is the prime necessity of the humans' civilization, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, this is external. This may be okay, but this is on the external platform, bodily platform. I want further more. So Krishna consciousness transcends. It doesn't mean that one should neglect their bodily swadharma. Only if there is an order from the superior. Okay, you give up job and join here. Okay, you do this, which is completely antagonistic to your material duty. Only in those rare circumstances, one should move away from their swadharma. Otherwise, Prabhupada also was very clear. Follow the order of the country. If they forward a particular law, then you have to abide by the law. Do not try to circumvent or disobey the order of the government. If you have a job, you have to do the job. If you are supposed to abide by this rule, you have to abide by this rule. But exceptional situations, Prabhupada encouraged, like book distribution. Yes, you can go and you can adopt some intelligent ways in going and spreading our Krishna consciousness, distributing books by taking a little liberal permissions. But apart from that, one has to obey their swadharma on the bodily level. And we also have a spiritual sadharma, which is the order of the spiritual master in the temple. When we are working in the temple or in the movement, we take different roles. You may be a Sudra in the material realm, but in the temple you may take a Brahmana role. That is the order of the spiritual master. So that Swadharma is on the spiritual platform. Or the same day you may take a Sudra role in cleaning the temple or cleaning the bathroom. So in the Krishna consciousness movement, our Swadharma is completely based on the order of the spiritual master. Whereas externally, on the material platform, our Swadharma is based on our bodily designation, our occupation, like that. So I'll stop here. Any other questions, comments on what we discussed?